Hello everyone and welcome back to the Make Your Own Noise podcast for 2025. I hope you got exactly what you needed from your break, whether that was rest, being productive, social with family and friends, or time in your own space. I really hope you got what you needed from your break and you're excited for the year ahead, because that's why you're here listening today. The podcast is how to make this year count. We have a new year ahead. For many, this is a time for a clean slate. We hear the new year, new me sweeping around. We make these big New Year's resolutions that this year is going to be different. We make sweeping changes and statements. But all too often, by the end of even the summer or January, we are back to our old habits. Our goals have been forgotten or become too daunting, and we get this uncomfortable but familiar feeling of being stuck or not reaching our full potential. And that's not how we want to start the new year. So don't worry, today I am going to be talking to you about ways that we can make this year really count. My hope is that all of you listening to this finish 2025 and look back with a real sense of pride, fulfillment, and joy. Because as cliche as it sounds, life is bloody short and we all too often forget that. I think if we did remind ourselves of this more often, we would care less about the small minds of others or our own negative self-talk. Why do we even think in such a way? It's because our minds are trying to protect ourselves from embarrassment, failure, hurt. It's the part of our brain that did so well in keeping us alive for all these years, but in today's context, it has little use for us at all. And the negative minds of others, why do they make small comments and remarks to us? They're just trying to protect their own egos by keeping us small, because inside they know they're not reaching their full potential. And I don't want the same to happen to you. If we are all living in alignment and reaching our full potential, our community will be one of support and encouragement, and that's for the greater benefit of all. What does our full potential look like? Well, that's totally unique to each individual and where their values lie. But our physical, emotional, and spiritual needs need to be met, and we each have a duty to ourselves and for the world around us to build deeper relationships and connections and to perform some kind of service to others. So in today's podcast, we'll be going through 2 key ways to make this year count. That will be the heart of today's podcast. We'll also go through ways to create the environment and space for the mental clarity needed to create your goals and set your vision, as well as ways to stay motivated and on track. So first up, before we start talking about goal setting and visualization, we actually need to create the space and environment for us to think clearly. And I have spoke a bit about this before in our post-study overwhelm episode, so I will be repeating some stuff and some will be new. When I'm talking about space in this context, so when I'm talking about creating the space and the environment to think and plan, I'm actually talking about our inner space. I'm absolutely as guilty as anyone for having an insanely busy internal monologue. What I need to do, where I need to be next, etc. So when I'm talking about creating space, I'm talking about quietening down our inner voice and thoughts to allow clarity and creativity to arise. How can we create this space? Well, often we can change our external environment. We can declutter a messy space. We can remove any distractions such as our phone and devices, TV, or other people. These are all great ways to help minimize external distractions, and we're changing our external environment. And again, I have spoke about this before, but we all know deep down how distracting our phones and devices in particular are. By removing them, we are giving ourselves a better chance of slowing down our mind. Repeated studies have shown that by checking your phone for even just a few seconds can result in 20 to 25 minute windows that your brain needs to regain the level of focus and cognitive performance it had before the distraction. Other ways we can create this space are through practices such as meditation, yoga, journaling, even just going for a simple walk outside. Again, no devices. Can do another episode on that another time. Everyone has different ways that works for them. But for now, I just want us to be aware that before we get cracking into our amazing years and we want to set our goals and our vision, creating some inner space and stillness to think clearly and creatively will help us focus on how we want to make this year count. So for the main part of this episode, the 2 key ways we can make this year count. These 2 things are, number 1, we are going to set a couple of main goals that are completely within our control to achieve this year. They should be challenging but achievable. And number 2, we are going to visualize and write down our big picture North Star. This may be a specific achievement, lifestyle choices, professional accolades, etc. I have spoken about this North Star big picture thinking before, but it's actually more what we do after we've defined that, which is new to today's episode and what I really want to be talking about. So before we delve into these 2, let's just repeat them one more time. The 2 things we're going to do this year to make this year count are, number 1, we are going to set a couple of main goals that are completely within our control to achieve this year. They should be challenging but achievable. And number 2, we are going to visualize and write down our big picture North Star. And we are going to be then doing something from there. So we have our main goals and then the visualization and writing down of our North Star. So let's look more closely now at the first point. We're going to set a couple of main goals. These main goals are completely within our control and they should be challenging but achievable to do this year. Why was I so specific here? For us to make sure the goals we set are completely within our control. Because that way we are 100% accountable and we have no excuses. For me, a goal cannot be this year to have a song win a Grammy as one of my main goals. I have absolutely no control over the commercial success or voting systems. But with this example, what could a main goal for 2025 be instead of that? It could be to work hard to save money to invest in a great piece of equipment for my business. It could be to sign up and complete an online course that will develop my skills. These are things completely within my control. So again, to repeat ourselves, we are going to set a couple of main goals that are completely within our control so that we are 100% accountable. These goals should be challenging and achievable so that we can use these achievements as anchor points to look back and say, yeah, that year I did a great thing or a handful of things. We often don't notice the small changes we make within ourselves, the good and the bad. So for our motivation, it is great for us to be able to confidently say that we did some specific great thing or things that year. 2025 was the year I made my first big tech purchase for the business. It was the year I built my website. It was the year I cold called or reached out to 100 new clients. All of these things are within your control. They are challenging but achievable. So by setting and achieving these goals, this is where we get a great sense of self-pride and core confidence from. Not from external validation, but a confidence within that we set our mind on something and achieved it. So set a couple of these main goals for you to be able to proudly look back on at the end of this year and say you completed. I've again spoken about this before, but make the goals clear and measurable. Some of my goals this year, for example, are to release 20 podcast episodes, this being the first one. I have a studio upgrade I want to build at Sonora. I have a few clear fitness goals and a few personal goals too around routines and screen time and other vices. So that is the end of the first way to make this year count. We are going to set a couple of main goals that are completely within our control, that are challenging but achievable for us to look back on as anchor points and proudly say that we achieved this year. So let's go on to number 2. We are going to visualize and write down our big picture North Star. This may be a specific achievement, lifestyle choices, professional accolades. Again, I've spoken about this before, but for those of you new to the podcast, what is a North Star? This is your big picture vision of your best future self. Unlike our first point of our main goals that are very specific and they're within our control and something to achieve this year, our North Star can be a very high level vision. It can be very far and distant in the future and really something high to reach for. I guess that's why, reach for the stars. For example, my North Star is to be renowned as one of the best mixing engineers in the world working on the most exciting music. And I also want to be a leading voice in personal development, especially for people in the creative fields. There's other, goals and things I'd like to be a great father one day and have my own standards around that. But I feel that's not necessarily unique, so I don't include that as my North Star. So really have a think on this for a while. Visualize your future. How do you want to be feeling? How do you want to be making a living? How do you want to be spending your time? What really lights you up? Once you've built this picture, try and define it by writing down your North Star. This really is where it goes back to that first point about creating the space and stillness within yourself to really reflect and what's important to you and what lights you up. What do you want to be doing? These are deep and not always that obvious straight away. And until you create that inner space and stillness to find those answers within yourself, you might really surprise yourself with what you come up with. And it can really light up your soul when you tap into that energy within yourself. So that's what I think I was talking about before with creating the stillness within yourself, especially for this in finding your North Star and visualizing your best future self. So what does this North Star have to really do with making this year count if it's so potentially far in the future? This is exactly what I want to talk about next, and this is what I was really excited to talk about with you guys today. Once we've defined our North Star, we are going to work back from that distant point in the future to this year and write down specific small habits that, if you stick to them, will give you the best chance of reaching those results. I call these my habit goals. So number one earlier was our main goals, our 1 or 2 anchor points for the year. Now we've defined our North Star, but now building off backwards from that, we are going to come down to some small habit goals to set for us this year. And I've done these for myself. And I'll share some in a sec. For example, if I want to be the best mixing engineer in the world, I need to work with great bands and develop my skills. To work with great bands, I need to dedicate time in my calendar to research and hit up exciting bands. So one goal this year is 1 day a month spending time hitting up a certain number of exciting bands. To develop my skills further, another goal is to have a Mix with the Masters account and watch the online content there. So if your North Star is to be in a band selling out Wembley Stadium, a habit goal this year could be that 1 night per week, every week for the year, you have a songwriting night. Or if you want to be the most renowned live music photographer in Australia, then your habit goal is to be researching and attending a certain number of shows a month. So having these goals, not just the 1 or 2 main goals, which I said are really important, but having these small habit goals that are consistent and on track, that align with your North Star, are also really important. And I've got a bunch of those this year. I've actually got, I think, about a dozen of the habit goals, and I've got like 3 of the main goals. So do you see where I'm going with this? Our North Star shouldn't be a goal we can just achieve in the near term. That would defeat the purpose and the high-level nature of what is a North Star and how high we can aim. But by building this clear picture of our best possible future, we can work backwards from there and break it down into small steps that we can achieve in the near term. This gives us the best chance of one day reaching our North Star and our big long-term goals. It's like the classic saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. If we set our goal to finish a 1,000-mile journey, we'd be so overwhelmed we'd never start. However, if our goal was to walk 1,000 steps a day, we'd reach that goal within 10 years if we stick to it. So once we've set our main goals and we've defined our North Star and broken down our habit steps from our North Star, we should then really make a visual representation to keep ourselves accountable and to remind us. So really it's to keep us on track, to keep us motivated and inspired. For some, it might be writing it on a whiteboard. It might be having it on Post-it notes in the mirror. It might be a spreadsheet. It might be in your Google Calendar. It might be a mixture of those things. But find a way to have it visually there to remind you, a way you can check it off, because our brains love that stuff. Mine does anyway, like ticking that box off and that little dopamine hit of achievement I think it's really important. It's a great way to celebrate the little win for yourself. So whether you want to create, again, a vision board or one of the things I just mentioned, think of a way that it's going to be there in the forefront of your mind to constantly remind you to chip away at, and also set timelines for these things. So the visual representation is super important, but also set timelines for these things. Don't wait till September to start doing the big goal. When do you want the website launch? When do you want to purchase that piece of equipment? When do you want to sign up for the course? Whatever it is, set some timeline so you have a clear vision, and then the visual representations being around you, in my case it's a spreadsheet, and in my Google Calendar, is constantly reminding me of the things that I am aiming towards, and it keeps me on track, and it keeps me from getting lost in the day-to-day crap that distracts us from our main goals. Keep the main thing the main thing. When you have that clear, concise vision and you are fully zoned in and working towards it, you can be unstoppable. But it's all the little distractions that pop up along the way that sidetrack you from that make you forget what your big picture was and what you're striving for and what's important to you. And that's what deters you from it. So get that stuff out of the way. Keep your mind clear. Keep your mind focused and on the goal and reminded and inspired by it. And you can achieve phenomenal things. So I really hope this podcast today has helped giving you some confidence, some motivation, and some clarity to grab this year and make it count, to not listen to the small voices of others or our own negative self-talk, to think big picture and be inspired by what we can achieve in the year and in the next 10 years after that. To go over again from today, If we set a couple of challenging but achievable goals for the year ahead that are completely within our control, we can use these as anchor points to build our self-confidence. These goals aren't about external validation or for your ego. These are about developing core confidence that you can set your mind to a task and achieve it. This is so important for your self-esteem and not to be confused with your ego. So we have our main goals set for the year that are there for our anchor points to look back and say, we did those great things at that time, which is really important for our motivation and our self-confidence. But we've also now built a really clear vision of our North Star and our best future self. And from that, we've broken down our small habit goals to set for the year that are in alignment to our North Star. So these habit goals are the small, consistent steps that if we stick to them, we know we are giving ourselves the best chance of one day achieving and reaching our North Star. So through setting and achieving our main goals and our habit goals, that is how we can really make this year count. Whether you want to make it count through a professional context, financial, health, relationships, all of the above, use this framework to help build a clear intention for your year ahead. It is so much more enjoyable, motivating, and sustaining traveling down a clear road. And I hope that by listening to this podcast, I've given you the tools to help you pave your own way. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited for the year ahead. Please let me know your thoughts. I love the messages and comments and responses I get from you. It means the world. And I will be here for another 19 episodes, hopefully this year, because that is one of my goals. Go after this year. Make it count. Make your own noise. I look forward to hearing your wins. I look forward to hopefully helping you through your challenges as well. All the best, and I will talk to you soon.